Welcome to another podcast recorded at the Rockwell Foundation Berlin, where I'm talking to some of the economists who are creating the next edition of the Handbook of Labor Economics. My name is Tim Phillips. We are fascinated by managers. We discuss our managers when we get home and when we meet our friends. We complain if we have too few of them or too many. We seek their approval and we hope they will mentor us. Katherine Shaw of Stanford Graduate School of Business has systematically measured what managers do, how well they do it, and what difference it makes to productivity. When we met up, I first of all asked her, are we right to give managers so much attention?
People talk about managers because sometimes they like their manager and sometimes they don't, but almost all people do have managers. Sometimes people leave their firms because they have bad managers. And so it's understanding that everyone talks about them because they can make their lives pleasant or unpleasant. However, econometricians, such as myself, or economists, are trying to find out what managers actually do.
We have a lot of anecdotal evidence and we read a lot of anecdotal evidence as well. And maybe we see some people who are spectacularly successful. I think we ought to copy them. You're looking at something more systematic, aren't you? How do you do that?
We started with managers that we call bosses, and these are managers of what we call technological workers. So there's many ways in which workers nowadays have their performance measured by a computer. And we got that data from a large company. We got the data of the managers and who they manage and the productivity of the workers measured by a computer. In this first study, what we did was we uncovered econometrically how productive a manager was, where a manager's productivity was raising the productivity of workers. And so I can give you some insight into how that's done. Very simply, if a few workers move from one manager to another manager and the worker's performance changes, that's how we quantify whether the manager is productivity enhancing.
And how much better are good managers than bad managers?
Overall, a good manager, if you have a team of 9 people, produces enough extra output that it'd be like adding another worker to the team. That's a lot. Now, within that, there certainly are good and bad managers. And yes, they really fill out the full range of possibilities. We like to think that there's a selection bias and that bad managers don't last long in a company too. And so they would leave or be fired themselves.
When we complain about managers, we always say they're overpaid. From your research, are good managers paid appropriately?
I'd be turning to a different study when we have the pay data. And it appears to be very, very accurate for the managers we're looking at because we have their pay, we have their workers' pay, and we know what the workers do. But those who are concerned about whether they're overpaid tend to be the press talking about CEOs. And of course, readers being very irritated that CEOs are so well paid. When you get down to a manager, I would imagine workers might complain some because, managers do make more, but not as much.
I guess sometimes we do conflate CEOs, senior executives, with the sort of managers that you're looking at here. Are they essentially different types of people?
Well, they're doing very different jobs.
Yeah.
Managers who are CEOs are those who are responsible for the performance of the company, and their success is measured as, did the company do well? And in contrast, and a lot has been written about them because you know the names of the managers in public companies and you know how their company did. In contrast, we're only beginning to study managers because that data was hard to get. And they have a broader range of jobs. They are inspiring. They are coaching. They are also doing tasks to manage the group.
There are literally thousands of books about how to be a good manager. Some of the advice overlaps, some of it maybe doesn't. From your experience, what are the good managers doing well? How are they helping their teams?
In this case, I'm going to have to turn to a different piece of my research.
Yeah.
And this is on the company RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, enormous bank. And we looked at 3 divisions in the bank. We looked at wealth management, banking, just as you would go to a local bank, the banking division. And we looked at the risk division. And what they do is check compliance with risk norms that have to be followed. In each case, we looked at their tasks and we looked at their pay and how they were paid. We got the results we'd expect, and yet we were so pleased to get them. So let me give you an example for each branch. In wealth management in Canada, these guys are giving advice to people who have less than $1 million in assets, but they're giving advice to do things like put money into a managed fund. And so they're really giving wealth management advice to low-level people for assets. Employees are paid a piece rate. So as their customers do well, they make more. And as a result, they don't need much supervision because their supervision comes from their inspiration to make money for their clients. And so their managers do a different thing. And we learned this using AI ML analysis of what they do. They really are there to coach and inspire. And then we look at the personal and commercial banking and what they do. Of course, these are just what we would think of as our banks. In this case, there's tellers and a lot more low-level workers. And so middle-level managers are a larger range of pay scale, and they are doing more supervising and controlling because they're managing people who are below a lower level. They're paid based on an annual salary. They're given it small bonuses, but what they're paid for also is advancement. There's quite a hierarchy. And then the third is the risk management. And we were surprised to find that one manager only manages about 2 or 3 people because it's so essential they do their job right that they manage very few people. These people in risk management are much higher paid than all the others, because they're more educated. So as we look at one company, we can really see variety and we can see why it occurs. Of course, you wouldn't expect all companies to use managers in the same way.
Yes, one thing that comes out of that, though, is the importance of recognizing the skills of managing the people that you have with you. This isn't just administrative, is it?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And so I would say for about, 8 to 10 years now, economists have been paying close attention to this. And also in these past 10 years, companies have put in place an annual measurement of how their managers are doing. This is now common for companies that are 10 people to thousands of people. All do it. It is a type of performance score where employees are asked how much they value their managers and a number of other questions. And so, yes, companies care about the fact that they're people managers. And I want to add that sometimes managers have trouble being people managers, not because they're not skilled, but because they feel pressure to do tasks on which they are evaluated from above. And that can be more operational and less people management.
A bad manager with a good team, are those team members more likely to leave because they've been managed badly?
Turnover is definitely higher for bad managers. There's no doubt that people leave bad managers.
And for those of us who've been lucky to have had really good managers in the past, does the effect of a good manager only exist when they're managing you, or is there an effect afterwards, a longer living effect from when we've moved on to another team or that manager's moved on to another job?
Yes, there's a long-lasting effect when the manager is managing a good employee. So if employees are going to be high turnover and don't really pay close attention or care about promotion, you find that the econometrics that estimates how long a good manager lasts is this 8 months, basically while that person is being managed. But for those people who aspire to do well and are higher performing people, they learn more from managers that persist.
There is always, during an economic downturn, that pressure to say, let's kick out the managers, let's get rid of layers of management. We have too many people managing in this company and not enough people doing things. From what you're saying, that might be quite dangerous.
Over time, there has been more for executives and managers, what's called a widening span of control. They have been monitoring more employees. Given all the evidence that people do need their managers, I think you'd want to think closely about your firm and what your managers are doing before you decide they're leaving.
Katherine, it's fascinating research. And as you say, research that affects all of us who are either managed or managers ourselves. So thank you for talking to us about it today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. The Rockwell Foundation Berlin Institute for the Economy and the Future of Work is providing new knowledge to inform public debate and to create the best possible basis for policy making. Find out more at rfberlin.com.